Friends, I know you're going to love this conversation because it's a conversation about relational capital and relational leadership, which we think is everything. And I'm delighted to introduce you to my friend and colleague, Michael Larson. We're going to try this in two parts. The first part, we're going to lay out what it means to be a relational leader and what it looks like to gather around the table. Listen up. This is the Arable Leader podcast. I'm Karl Martin, and we're exploring true, brave, kind, curious leadership, leading from your soul. Hi friends, huge welcome to the Arable Leader podcast with me, Karl Martin, and today with one of my close friends and colleagues, Michael Larson, and particularly with Michael because today we're going to talk about relational capital. We're going to talk about the thing I think above all things that is crucial in the leadership journey, particularly for Arable, because everything is relational. And all great leadership is relational leadership, the ability to read a room, the ability to extract the best in someone else, the ability to empathize with what's going on is the ability to lead people, which is what leadership is actually all about. So Michael, welcome. I often describe Michael as the non-anxious presence at Arable. He is calm personified. He's Mr. Hospitality, he's Mr. Generosity, and he's very, very intentional around this relational space. So Michael, take it away.
Well, thanks for having me. This is great.
That was a great introduction, wasn't it?
I loved it. Very generous. One of the things I think a lot of times that people think about in relationships, and I think this has gotten even more attention over the years, is the importance of questions. So it's sort of like blending a little bit of the Arable stuff here. Relational capital. How important is that? What does that look like? But with good questions, and how important that is to uncovering really who a person is. So just speak to that a little bit. Why is curiosity such a valuable leadership trait when it comes to kind of building these meaningful connections?
Well, let's talk about questions initially at the very outset, because what you said is absolutely true. The ability to ask great questions is absolutely vital in enabling someone else to feel seen, heard, honored, and have a seat at the table. But questions need to be actually questions and not statements. I've been in so many rooms where people have postured in asking questions which have really just been statements, where people want to say something but they frame it in a question. A great question enables you to take the focus off yourself and onto someone else. This is about real curiosity, really trying to discover who someone else is, what makes someone tick, how someone might show up. And the moment you start asking questions, and good questions, it stops being about you. You stop being the hero of the story. It starts being about them, and then it enables them to feel really seen, really heard, really honored. So yeah, the art of question asking is like a ninja skill.
I mean, you kind of alluded to the fact that people are maybe hesitant or maybe even afraid to ask questions. Why do you think that is?
I think possibly because we tend to like comfort and control. And so the moment you ask a question and you really genuinely ask a question and you listen to listen rather than just to listen to respond, you open up like a Pandora's box of possibility and opportunity. You have no idea where this is going to go. You don't know what's in someone's heart. And the moment you're curious enough to ask that question, it makes you very vulnerable, but it also opens up possibility and opportunity that you couldn't even have imagined. So the moment that you get fascinated and wonder-filled and enthusiastic about somebody else, is like the catalyzing moment in the kind of relationships you need to build as far as leadership is concerned.
Okay, so in a part of that, it seems to me a leader could step into that kind of environment and having a direction that they want the conversation to go, and really being directive in some way. You drop a question in there, all of a sudden, to your point, you release control. So what do you say to the leader who says, hey, I actually have a direction that I want to go, I'm a little bit scared as to where we're going to go with this if I ask an open-ended question. How do you give them direction or guide them through that or give them confidence, whatever you feel like they need to say, no, this is worth exploring uncharted territory and taking that risk?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's not a binary conversation. Good leadership, I think, is about telling people what to do, not telling them how to do it. By which I mean giving framework and direction and objectives, as opposed to making people walk in lockstep or making people do a line dance. And so I think you can hold both at the same time. I think you can have an agenda for a conversation and say, well, look, we've got to fix our sales figures, or we've got to, become top of class, or we've got to beat the next team. Opening up questions as to how you might do it and genuinely wanting to elicit responses that you might not have thought of gives people opportunities to express themselves. So I don't think it's like one or the other thing. I think you still need to lead with direction. But don't, I had a conversation even this morning with someone where I said, you kind of know you want your salespeople to be more hospitality driven, to be more relational, to be more curious. Don't tell them how to do it. Get them in a room and ask them, if you were going to be the best sales organizer, the best service organization on the planet, how would you go about? What would you do? How would you go about doing it? Let them begin to direct the conversation. And you've got no idea where that might go, but open yourself up to the possibility that you don't know the answers.
Yeah, it's good. When you think about a lot of leaders, they want to motivate their people. They want to inspire them towards something, a goal that in many cases has actually been put on them as a leader, right? To do certain things, achieve certain goals. And they want to inspire these people to be accountable, to get better, to change, to do something. And I can't help but think that kind leaders, and we believe this at Arable, that kind leaders actually can do that best. Right? Yes. Leading with kindness actually inspires and motivates people most effectively. But how does kind of maybe the table, which, our framework for where relationships happen best and are best leveraged, how does the table play into this idea of inspiring people and motivating people to really, in the end, do what the organization needs?
At its most basic level, the table is about creating space. The table is about creating space for dangerous, interesting, creative conversations. It's about people relaxing into themselves. It's about taking the heat off some situations and exploring possibilities which are deeply, deeply personal and deeply relational. And so I think there's kindness in that, because the moment that you sit down and you break bread as companions, from the original language, we break bread, bread fellows, is the moment that we begin to see one another as human beings. And the moment that you do that, you enable that, there's a kindness there, and it unlocks something in people. It unlocks creativity, which is deep in people. It unlocks dreams, and visions, and passions. It unlocks their personal desires alongside the desire of the organization. And you go to places you wouldn't have even begun to go to. I'm of the opinion that most organizations, even the best organizations, are currently getting about 50% of the creative energy and effort out of their employees. Because people don't feel seen, heard, honored, and valued. They don't show up taking risks. They don't show up pushing a bit further. But the moment that a leader says, I see you, I hear you, I want to understand the things that you see, I want your ideas at the table, is the moment that you feel inspired as a member of the organization to say, well, I'll give a bit more. I'll think a bit more. I'll carry rather than just deliver some of the ownership of this organization. So I think the table is massive, and it doesn't need to be a table. It's just about the making of space for fascinating conversations, which result in creative opportunities.
Yeah, that's good. You started that whole thing by kind of saying this creating space idea. And I mean, you work with busy leaders. I work with busy leaders. Everybody is busy. We live in this fast-paced world. And I think the instinct is to say, Karl, love the idea. Great. Go grab an hour and a half lunch in the middle of the day with a few of my team members to really help them feel seen, heard, and honored. But I don't have time for that. I can't take, because the real work has to be done. So I think an instinct is to say, and maybe this is the wrong question, maybe there's an answer to this, but is there a shortcut? How can I speed up this process of relational connection? If I don't have that much space, how do create a little space and then multiply it? What's your thought on that?
There are always ways to shortcut things, and most of them don't get you where you want to get to. So I think probably, get relational slow is better than get relational quick always. But there are some techniques and some things that you can apply. We have to create margin in our lives, because at the moment most of us don't have any margin, and therefore we don't have luxury to be able to stop, pause, have a coffee, ask a question, look someone in the eye, listen, because we're always listening to react, to respond, to get something done. And that will always keep you at 50 to 75% efficiency and effectiveness. It will never enable you to hear the wild idea or the great thought or the heart dream of someone and release them. If people are the project, then we have to give them space. Now, I'm also of the opinion, Michael, that that forced fun is rarely fun. And so when I talk about margin, I'm really talking about how do we create space between our meetings, our agendas, our deadlines, to be able to treat people like humans, to be able to see people, to be able to listen to them. How do we have open offices and open doors and coffee? I was part of an organization that decided we wanted to build greater relationships. So we took this I think it's a Swedish idea or a Scandinavian idea of fika, where you basically have coffee and cake sometime in the middle of the day, but we edicted it. At 11 o'clock every day, we would do fika and we would build relationships. And
right.
It was the most awkward thing on the planet. Everyone stopped their work, whatever they were doing, whatever conversations they were in. They totaled out to the kind of cafeteria area. We had coffee and cake, and then we had these kind of slightly forced conversations, and it wasn't fun, and no one built relationships. Where the relationships are built is between the meetings, between the forced things. So a meal is great. And curating it is great, but actually the 10 minutes snatched where you don't rush from one place to the next, the non-diaried events is where these relationships grow, where this kindness grows, where you build the trust in an organization.
Okay, and often we say, in Arable, it's kind of both and it seems like in what you just said, it's organic and it's organized. So speak more to the intentional space, like the difference between forced fun, which I get and nobody likes, and yet, hey, let's go grab lunch. That may or may not end up in anything of value if there's nothing kind of structured or intentional about the conversation. So how do you find that balance, that tension?
Well, let me throw that back at you, because in our team, you're kind of the king of this kind of curated space. So how do you do? What have you seen that works as far as that kind of formal mealtime, dinner time question? I've been around your tables, and you're great at asking questions. Talk to me about how you do it.
I was really looking forward to your answer, but now I'll give what I can. I think the first thing that comes to mind is knowing the table. So I've got a big family. We've got chaos around the table, 9 times out of 10. And so sometimes the forced fun actually just sucks the life out of the room. If we're like, hey, be quiet, we're asking this question, we're having this conversation now. And yet never forcing that also means that it will just be pure chaos. So I think some of it is knowing who's sitting around your table, what are they up for, reading the room, and then asking a question that feels right for that moment. I also think, especially for kind of going back to the busy leader, busy families, busy work life, whatever's going on, you sometimes overthink what needs to happen. And you think, I've got to come up with the perfect environment, the perfect question. And the reality is sometimes highs and lows, that's the perfect question. What's going on in your life that's great? What's going on in your life that's tough? And then from there, we've started this thing a couple of times with our kids in particular, where we call it 1,000,000 questions. Because if you have this mindset of curiosity, one question is all it actually takes to get a really good conversation going. If you say what give me your highs and lows, and then you're curious, you kind of pull on the thread that you find interesting in that spot. So I think that's one, is just like reading the room, knowing what your table is. I would say this is maybe more of a personal thing, but also coming into some tables over prepared in order to be able to kind of navigate well when things show up and people show up differently than maybe you're assuming. So if this is more of in a work environment and you sense, oh, people actually they're willing to engage at a deeper level right now. I've got something in my back pocket. I've got a question that actually could get us there, and if I don't, okay, what's your walk-up song right now? That's one of your favorites. Right. It's like, that's okay, right. What would we ask? So I think that's part of it, is just really reading the room, going in with a little bit more than you maybe think you need, but also being open to letting the table go where it goes.
I've had some, because this is what I do, and because almost all of my agreements, contracts with clients have the opportunity to take the team for dinner, and they're assuming I'm going to ask really gnarly questions. So there's this kind of rumor that goes around the organization, oh, don't go for dinner with Karl, because you're going to get asked some deep psychological thing. Someone's going to cry, and so I'm always really prepared. I was just thinking about one of the conversations I had with one of the teams that I work with, and I said something like, what do you like most? It was very simple. What do you love most about the job that you do? And this was the C-suite team. And then the counter question, the follow-up question was, whose job around this table would you really like to have and you haven't got? And so we had that question, and it was hilarious because I think I slightly misjudged the timing of it, because the team didn't know me that well and I didn't know the team that well, and they all lied to me. It was hilarious. Like, oh, a lie. Oh, that's a lie. That's not true. That's not true. And I had follow-up meetings with them the next day, in one-on-one in person, and they all fessed up to lying. They all said, well, actually, I wanted his job. But I didn't feel like I could say, because I felt like that would be like, the blood in the water if I were to say I want your job. And so, but yeah, be prepared, and don't feel afraid to ask some pretty tough questions. Because, I think we rarely go there with great depth in our working environments. And actually, I think people are longing to. I think people want to they want you to go 2 rungs deeper and go, well, who actually are you? What do you really want out of life? What do you dream of? If you had no fear in life, what would you do? If all bets were off and you could have any role in this organization, what role would you have? What's the psychological game you choose to play when you show up to work? What's it called, and why? What do you think you get out of it?
I've gotten the impression, probably in part because this has been me, but that leaders are a little bit afraid to have these conversations, especially in like a corporate work environment. It seems risky, seems scary. Number one, so 2-part question. One, why do you think that's our instinct, to be scared of these spaces? And 2, what's almost a practical baby step to get us over that fear and just start to dabble with this type of conversation?
Yeah. Well, I think that my response to that would be probably singular. I think we've created an artificial separation, which we all know is just not true. We've done this work-life balance separation thing. We've said, you have to separate your personal life from your private life, your personal life from your public life, from your work life. And anyone who's doing anything significant in the world knows that's just a load of BS. Yeah. You can't do that. If you're going to show up well in any one of these environments, you show up as who you are. You show up as a whole person. Now, do you need boundaries? Do you need to separate? Of course you do, and there's conversations we can have around that. But showing up holistically and recognizing that the person in front of you has children. The person in front of you has relationships. The person in front of you has financial concerns. The person in front of you is worried about. I think the pandemic kind of slightly helped us with this, because our focus was not on, are we going to make you money in this quarter? Our focus was on, are your family safe? We actually began to have those kind of conversations. So, starting off with, hey, tell me about your life as a whole. Great leaders know how to love their people well. And loving people well means treating them as a whole human being, not treating them as a commodity.
Yeah.
And so knowing the name of your spouse, knowing your favorite pastime, understanding if you were your coffee order, or knowing those things will help you lead people well and help you understand why someone's performing or not performing, struggling or not struggling. Sorry, that was a bit of a rant, but you know what I'm trying to say? You treat someone as a whole person, understanding you cannot separate these things. And it's perfectly okay. And one of the things that we talk about is the boardroom table and the dining table.
Yeah.
Interchangeably, taking the rules of the boardroom table and bringing them to your dining table will help you have structured conversations and help you grow people. Taking the relationality and the informality of the dining room table and bringing it to the boardroom table will help you treat your leaders as human beings who have spirits and souls and passions and I just think you'll end up with a much better product, by the way.
Yeah, it's good. Boiling that down, the practical step is just realize that people are people, just like you. I had a boss.
I told you, Michael Larson is a genius. I just spent 5 minutes trying to express something. So people are people.
That's brilliant. All right. I had a boss who used to say, everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time, and that's we sometimes forget that.
We don't say that in the UK because it means a whole different thing.
One question that we got in was what basically you've kind of laid out the value for this, and I would hope that's if we're kind of carrot and stick in leadership, that's the carrot. There is so much value, but on the other side of this, what do leaders give up? What do they forfeit if they don't spend time intentionally creating connection? What do they miss out on?
Gosh, well, they miss out on the beauty of being human and leading humans, and they miss out on the creativity that comes from that.
Yeah.
They miss out on the companionship that comes from that. They miss out on team, and team is everything, right? You've heard me say this before, there's no such thing as an individual. There is only team. And so if you cannot go to the next level and the next layer and understand the person in front of you, you end up treating them as a commodity, as part of a process, as a cog in the wheel. And you begin to lose something of your soul in that. They begin to lose something of their soul in it. And actually, no one ever gives themselves to a compelling vision, a compelling dream. No one ever gives themselves to bettering the world. The narrative becomes, I'm putting this brick on top of this brick on top of this brick, not I'm building a cathedral to the glory of God, or I'm building a road that helps people go on an adventure, or whatever the thing is. And so you miss out on dreams, adventures. You miss out on epic journeys. You miss out on the narrative that could be possible. The moment that you begin to unlock the relational aspect of leadership.
Yeah, it's good.
So, Michael, tell us about how Arable is engaging with the concept of table for people beyond the immediate team.
So over the last probably 12 to 18 months within our team, we came to a really, enlightening realization. A lot of the work that we do is one-on-one coaching. Some of it is almost more team consulting within the culture space. And we do a lot of content. And all of those things are important. But one thing that we've kind of discovered that's almost the secret sauce to this really being impactful in people's lives is doing it in community. So hashing through this content, working through the things that are in our heads and actually putting them into our day. So we've begun to develop what we're calling cohorts. And these cohorts gather people that are either somewhat familiar or maybe even unfamiliar with the Arable way and our content, but begin to have conversations around this stuff. And the magic happens when people are sharing ideas. And this idea sparks that idea, and they begin to wrestle things into not just their head, but into their day and into their calendar. So it's just an opportunity that we've got. We're launching these over the next several weeks. So if people are interested, I'm sure they can find it in the show notes or go over to our website and check it out.
Wow. So coaching, content, cohorts, conversations, courses coming soon. Wow.
All of it.
We're good with the alliteration. Michael, thank you so much. Looking forward to speaking soon.
Thanks, Karl.
You've been watching The Arable Leader with Karl Martin. Subscribe for more episodes with great leaders. And you can also listen to The Arable Leader wherever you get your podcasts. For more resources for leading in a healthy way, visit arableco.com and check out Karl's new book, The Cave, the Road, the Table, and the Fire.